Good evening. My name is Doug Smith. I'm with the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, work with the Exceptional Children Department. I'd like to welcome you to our new and emerging teacher cadre. And this one is going to be dedicated to 6 classroom practices. I'll let these folks from the co-op that are my colleagues introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do.
So I guess I'll go first. I'm Chastity Craft. I'm the literacy consultant here at Cadre.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Kidd. I'm the math consultant here at KVAC.
Like I said, I'd like to welcome everyone. This is the first in our series this year of the new and emerging teacher cadre. And then again, we're going to be looking at the 6 classroom practices as presented by Midwest PBIS. So some of the things that we're going to be looking at or talking about today, we're going to be looking at the physical environment of our classrooms, looking at the classroom teaching matrix, we're looking at active supervision, encouraging appropriate behavior, discussing continuum of responses for inappropriate behaviors, and engagement and opportunities to respond. So these 6 classroom practices, research has shown to have a positive impact on students. The goal is to have the consistent use of these practices by all teachers. And like I said, these practices are the talking points that we're going to be looking at, are the 6 classroom practices that I'm referring to. So what is the rationale behind good classroom management? Well, good classroom management lends to positive student outcomes. It also encourages positive behaviors from at-risk students, and it supports all students in preventing problem behaviors. Also, good classroom management signals to the kids and the staff that the class is a safe place to learn. It's not only is it a physically safe place to be, but psychologically safety as well. And well-managed classrooms are rated to have more positive climates. So the first one that we want to look at are the classroom practices would be the physical arrangement of the classroom. Space is arranged so that all students can see, hear, move freely, and engage to maximize learning and allow for active supervision. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about active supervision a little bit later on in our presentation. But so as you're thinking about the physical arrangement of your classroom, make sure that you can see all your students and all your students can see you. They can move about the environment without worrying of tripping over a desk or tripping over someone's feet. Have the high traffic areas kind of outlined or designated for, what students you want to sit close to the pencil sharpener or what students you need to sit close to the door, and just look at things like that. And just a tip that I would always like to do is sit down in one of your student seats. And while you're sitting in that seat, just look around the classroom. See that you can see the teacher's desk and that the teacher can see you. Also look at the materials that are hanging on the wall, all the instructional materials that you may need, and just any of the housekeeping things that you have to take care of, paper, pencils, where to turn in homework, how to get your book bag, things like that. Just make sure that the environment that you're in is suitable to those students and is very easy to maneuver in that environment. So the rationale for effective classroom or physical arrangement or physical environment is that it helps increase on-task behavior for all students. Students and staff have an increased perception of safety as well as a respect for others' personal space. Makes it easier to use the curriculum and the materials, and it allows for active supervision or teacher movement throughout the environment. So next thing we want to look at is the classroom teaching matrix. It's not really an actual practice that you're going to put into place, but it is critical for the foundation for establishing consistency among the adults. The classroom teaching matrix includes teaching expectations, rules, and routines. All classrooms should have an easy to follow matrix that contain the school-wide expectations, classroom rules, and classroom routines. So it's very we get into the first few days of school, we get into, all right, I've got my rules, I've got my expectations, I have my routines, I've got these posted on the wall, I've read the rules to the kids, and we're done. If you do that, that's a great start. But when you have those rules and expectations and routines, you have to teach those rules and expectations to the students. You have to model those behaviors for the students. And you also have to practice those behaviors and provide them with the corrective feedback, immediate corrective feedback, so that you're not practicing something that is you're not practicing the inappropriate behaviors, but you're practicing the appropriate behavior. So make sure that you establish your rules, you teach those rules, you model those rules, you practice those rules, you reteach, remodel, repractice as many times as you need to. So the rationale for creating this matrix is it is a dependable system of rules and procedures that provide structure for students and help them be engaged with instructional tasks. Teaching these rules and routines to the students also helps to be done at the beginning of the year, but also throughout the year, after a spring break or after fall break, after a couple of days missed because of weather or something like that. You always want to go back and reteach your rules and expectations, and then show those and practice those again when your students get back. And do this consistently throughout the year. So active supervision. So some examples, active supervision is exactly what it says. You're able to walk around the classroom, moving continuously, scanning all areas of the classroom and interacting with the students positively and with authenticity. So active supervision means that I can see my students, I can hear my students, I can interact with my students. I think it is Dr. Anita Archer says, walk around, talk around, look around. So just make sure that you're active within your classroom. You teach from your feet, not from your seat. You're not sitting all the time. You're up walking around the classroom, talking to your students, engaging with your students, and they're engaging with them as well. The active supervision also helps to build those relationships that you're going to have to develop with your students in order to have a positive, proactive school year. And some examples of active supervision could be proximity. Of course, proximity is moving closer to the students in the environment. You can use active supervision in the hallways, active supervision in the cafeteria and the gym. So just be visible, be seen, and be able to interact with your students. Also, listening is an example of active supervision. Just listening to what the students are talking about, being there to listen to the students when they want to talk to you, just being available to the students is an example of active supervision. Making eye contact with your students, smiling, students are more likely to enjoy the day if they see you with a smile on your face, because they know that you are happy to be there and you're glad to see them. So use a pleasant voice tone with your students. Use the students' names when you interact with them. Folks like to know that you know their names, and they like to hear their names. So when you're interacting with your students, use their names, and have something in common that you can talk to them about. Build those relationships around things that you're both interested in. Express care, show concern. Be excited that the students are there. Oh, thank you, man. I'm glad to have you in my class this year. I am so happy to see you today. If a student's been absent or been sick or something like that, be enthusiastic when they come back to class or come back to school. Let them know that you are really excited for them to be there, and that you miss them, and they add so much. Let them know that they add to your class, and you build those positives, and then you're going to outweigh the negatives far more than you would think. So what are some other examples of ways to use active supervision? What are some things you can do in your classroom as far as active supervision?
Would it be something like, instead of, like you had referred to Dr. Archer earlier, instead of just staying in your teacher area at your desk and having them work on an assignment, then you can go walk around and to check in with them, you're checking to make sure they're on task, but also with you walking around and going visiting the different desks and the different groups, that proximity closes in.
Yeah, yes, that'd be a great example. Another thing that I was thinking about, which is very easy to do, is everyone uses Post-it notes. So if you grab a Post-it note and just write a quick comment on a post-it note and drop it by a student's desk. I mean, that would be a great way to show them that you're paying attention to them, and that you value them and you value their ideals and opinions. Just, on a post-it note, quickly write, great job, staying on task. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate the way you interacted in class today. So examples, those things like that, just those little simple awards or rewards and encouragements could go a long way. Just a high five, a fist bump, just things like that. Uh, Helps with that, helps them to understand that you're watching, looking around and seeing what's going on, but you're also there for that student to help build that relationship and to help them with any difficulties they may be having in school. Thank you. Next thing we want to look at is encouraging appropriate behaviors. So when we encourage appropriate behavior, we instruct what is expected, communicate positive examples, and give specific feedback and motivate students with reinforcers. Now, I've seen some examples. I know some of us are just starting back to school. Some of us may not be in school as of yet, but it's getting close. So on that first day of school, when we get those little fellows into our classroom, the little ladies, no matter what grade it is, you need to teach them, or you need to show them what it means to be a first grade student. This is what I expect of you as a first grade student. And then and show them, and also model that behavior for them. This is what my sixth grade students look like. This is what it means to be a 10th grade student in my classroom. And so we have those strategies, and we instruct them what's being expected of them, and we communicate positive examples to those students. For example, if we're doing a group project, then we would have different tasks or different jobs that our students would be completing during that project. For example, if you're the note taker, this is what it looks like to be a note taker. You will get a marker and you'll get a piece of chart paper, and then as your group discusses the project, you will write the notes down and present them to the group so that they can share out with the class. So encourage them, use appropriate behavior, and instruct them what's expected of them. Another example with this would be instructing them to what hallway procedures are, how to come into our classroom, how do we go to our seat, how do we turn in assignments, and things like that. So one of the things that you want to do is you have a written plan to teach the behavior and teach the routines in your classroom. You want to provide those students with preventative prompts. So you want to prompt expected behavior just prior to when it is needed. For example, I used hallway procedures. When I was in the classroom, I would always remind the students of what the hallway procedures were the last couple minutes of the class. It's right-hand side of the hallway, hands to yourself quietly, please. And that's all it took. I mean, it wasn't more than 5 seconds, 10 seconds at the most. Reminded them of those hallways procedures as they left the class. So y'all have a great day. Appreciate it. Just provide them with those preventative prompts, free correct those behaviors that you know that you may see. Use behavior specific praise as well. We need to be praising our students at least 4 positives to 1 negative. We got to put those positive behavior phrases into the bank account. So, when our students need those corrections or need those negative comments made to them, we've got those positives built up. And it should be behavior specific, not just everyone did a great job. Thank y'all for being here today. Great job. Little Dougie's back in the back with his feet propped up on the desk. He thinks he's doing a great job. But what specific behavior did you see that warranted that praise? An example would be, Doug, thank you for keeping your eyes on the speaker. That's showing respect. So again, the specific behavior that I saw that you are praising was keeping their eyes on the speaker and showing respect to the speakers. You would want to use individual reinforcers. Now, individual reinforcers now are those things that are reinforcing to the student. What are some things that motivate the student? What motivates me may not be a reinforcer to a student. Had a couple of kiddos going to the library was very reinforcing to those students, so that we get the last 15 minutes of the day. If they had a really good day and worked and got all their assignments completed and followed the expectations and rules and routines and procedures, would go to the library for the last 15 minutes of the day. It wasn't really reinforcing to me, but they enjoyed reading. And so that's what we did. Other students that I worked with would rather go outside or have an extra recess or extra 5 minutes on the computer, and they'd work for that. So make sure that your reinforcers or your motivators are those things that the individual finds motivating to them, not just what you think would be great for that student, but what the student actually enjoys or likes doing. Also, we look at group contingencies are based on the whole group or whole class, how they do throughout the week. So some examples are, that they use are talking about tiger tokens, or, some of them use tickets. I've seen that used, just some use so many specific amount of points that they have to earn by the end of the week, and they get a little social reward. And it is not, it's the whole group earns it. It's not just, okay, well, we got 15 minutes at the end of class today. You get to do, something fun. The whole class earned that, not just one or two students. So if you're doing something for the group, then make sure everyone in that classroom, everyone gets to participate in what that reward is. And after they earn it, don't take it away from the students. If you've earned something, make sure that you follow through with what you promised them you would do. So our next thing that we want to look at briefly would be a continuum of responses for inappropriate behavior. These strategies are the consequences that are used to address inappropriate behaviors. All right, now, consequences are how you respond to behaviors. That's not necessarily the punishment that you're providing, but it is how do you respond to that behavior. So for example, if little Doug throws a book in the floor and you remove him from the classroom, the consequence was the removal of the student. So, and what we want to look at is we're going to start with the least intensive intervention, and then progress to more intensive measures as the behavior requires. So if, so a student calling out would not have the same consequences as a student throwing a book across the room. Whatever that, those lower level disruptions, you would want to start with something least intensive and then progress more toward more intensive measures. What's the least amount of intervention I have to use in order to get the students to comply? And so the rationale for using a continuum of consequences is, of course, we need to have a toolbox where we have different tools we can use or different ways of dealing with inappropriate behaviors. So we need that toolbox or toolkit to diminish the frequency, intensity, and duration of inappropriate behaviors. Also, there's no single strategy that works for all students all the time. What works for me one weekend or one week may not work the next time. So we got to have different strategies and different ideals and different ways of dealing with inappropriate behaviors. Also, we need to start thinking about what is the function of the behavior as we use these strategies with the groups of students. So what is the student getting out of this behavior? You got to think about it. If we look at our function of behavior, there's only two reasons for behaviors. I either get something out of using that behavior or I avoid something. If we see a pattern of the student using the same behavior and the student's being removed from the classroom, so that we need to look at that. What is that function of that inappropriate behavior? If the student is doing this during reading class and they have a difficult time with reading, or they're not reading on grade level, or reading is difficult for them, or they have a learning disability, then we would need to look at, okay, we're removing the student from this class. He's getting out of class. He's not having to complete that assignment. So what are some ways or some strategies that we can use besides removing them from class? What are some other things that we can put into place? Because we know the reason he's wanting out of class is to avoid the reading assignment. Our next classroom practice that we want to look at will be engagement and opportunities to respond. The key here is to maximize involvement of all students through strategies and questions to solicit group responses rather than one student at a time. And I'll let the ladies give some examples of that.
Activities in which you would have the whole group to respond, where you've got like whiteboards or those kind of things, and you give them the opportunity to cover up their answers, and you go 1, 2, 3, but then you give them the answer so that they can look back and check themselves. It's an easy way for you to formatively assess quickly, But then afterwards, you have that opportunity for that child to change the answer or get the answer very quickly.
Thank you.
Doug, for the older kids, we may want to think about, they call them plickers or clickers, those kind of things, those activities in which they've got a card that they hold up and they can have A, B, C, D around it. Or like they've got the electronic things that they do like Kahoot and those kind of things, even though people aren't seeing their answers, they're given the opportunity to have the answer given back to them very quickly.
Thank you. It's a great idea, great examples. Appreciate
Another
it.
one too, that when you thinking about kids that may not know the answer, but in order to get them involved is, and again, it goes back to a practice that Anita Archer does. When she's teaching vocabulary, she will tell the answer. For example, if she's going over a definition of a vocabulary word, and you have the word of friendly, and you say friendly is an example of being friendly is nice. What is the answer? Nice. And it encourages, so they just repeat back, and all they have to do is listen. So that gives the opportunity. You're giving them the answer, and then it gives them to respond back to you. So
Thank you. Yes. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Anita Archer, Dr. Archer, the book that we refer to quite often is called Explicit Instruction. So if you get an opportunity to pick that book up, it's a very good resource. Great wealth of information in that resource. So it is Explicit Instruction by Dr. Anita Archer. Just put a plug in there for her.
and also we have some training opportunities here at the co-op too that's offered different times throughout the year. So when those trainings and conferences and things are sent out to you, and if you see anything that is around explicit instruction, that is from her work and the book that Doug had just referenced. And also, and that is just really a foundational piece for teaching, and it makes it easy on you as a teacher, and it's also has a great impact for the students. So just again, if you see if anything that would be explicit instruction, I would recommend signing up for that session.
Yes, definitely.
Another one, Doug, that I was thinking about, we hear think, pair, share often with the kids, where they can share before actually being given an answer out loud. And so they can kind of bounce things off. But there's also think, pair, write, share, to where they write down the things that they're coming from the other student added to their notes. So that's another one, especially for our older kids.
And I think the one that I like Dr. Archer uses is your shoulder partner or whatever, ones and twos. Students get to turn to each other and discuss things before they share out with the whole group. So but yeah, anything with explicit instruction, like Miss Chastity said, and Miss Stephanie, sign up for those. There'll be a lot of fun and a lot of great information. Rationale for increasing the opportunities to respond include more students being involved in learning activities, the more they learn, and that increases the amount of material that is covered. And students' on-task behavior and correct responses increase while disruptive behavior decreases. Also, opportunities to respond is shown to improve reading and math performance, and provides continual feedback for the teacher on student learning and effectiveness of his or her teaching strategies. To change behavior, we need to step back and create more long-term campaigns and provide continuous opportunities for practice. And this not only goes toward what we are doing as teachers, but this is for students as well. Now, also, in order to change behavior of our students, sometimes we have to change our own behaviors. We have to change how we respond to that student. A lot of times we're not going to change that student's behavior, but we're going to change our response to that student. And then in turn, the student will recognize that and start to correct their own behavior. So like I said, I'm Doug Smith with Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and I'll let Miss Chastity Craft as our literacy consultant.
With this quote, if you really think about it, it has a great impact, because a lot of times you need, And as new teachers, well, any teacher, not just new teachers, but sometimes, I mean, you could be stressed out, have a lot of things going on, and sometimes you do not even realize that you're projecting these but well going into a different track, like carrying in behavior yourself. So you have to kind of it's make sure that you're separating those things. And also when he was going over this, I was thinking about myself, and because and we all, everybody here at the co-op, so we have all been in the classroom for many, many years. And so we realize, that sometimes, I mean, we understand what you guys are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so just always keep in mind too, that you have to, you have buddies in your building, and some days there are kids that maybe, you've done what you can, and you can just tag out kind of, because you recognize that how you're responding to that kid is in fact making it worse, and it's because of you. And so sometimes you can just, you tag out, let your cohort come in and let them talk to them. And that's a big piece. I think that is helpful for me. And it could be for whatever the reason that it, and sometimes that I may be going kind of off track, but it was just something I was thinking about when I was in the classroom. And some days there's, you get difficult kids, and they and you love them dearly, but sometimes it's hard. And you had, we had a code word, kind of like if my cohort and I were working with a kid, and they were having, we were having to work with them to calm their behavior down. And if we realized that one or the other needed a break, and most of the time it was me, because my cohort was, I don't know, he just seemed to handle it much better than I did. But anyhow, then he would just kind of look at me and he'd be like, you can go ahead. And he's like, I got you for a second, just go ahead and step out. And then I was able to separate myself for just for a second and just kind of, catch my breath and count down. And then I was able to go back in and be able to do that. You was able to de-escalate the situation rather than making it worse.
Right, and that's a good point. Yes, the tap out or tag out, what it is, and it is a strategy that teachers are starting to use more often now. And we would always use the excuse, "You've got a phone call," and if someone said you had a phone call, it's time to you just step away for a couple minutes, like you said, gather your thoughts back, recenter yourself, do some mindfulness activities, deep breathing, counting to 10. I had to go to 1,000 a couple times, but I mean, but yes, and Miss Chastity is correct. Like she said, the staff that are here have either been in the classroom or dealt with the classroom for many, many years. So yeah, and like you said, you got to have a colleague. You got to have someone that you can talk to, because don't take school home with you. You got to separate the two, and you can't bring what's happening on the way to work into the classroom with you. So just but commend every one of you for what you're doing. And I know it's difficult, man, especially after the last 3 years that we've had, and then plus this past summer it's been difficult. So great job on everyone. If you need any help with anything, any of you folks, please don't feel embarrassed to reach out to any of us.
Well, and please reach out to us, because we would much rather be out in the schools with you guys and those kids instead of sitting here in the office. So please get us out in your schools and let us help you.
Yeah, appreciate everyone sticking around with us this afternoon as well.
Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. No question is a dumb question, because if you're asking questions, then that means that you are, you're trying things and wanting to know, and that just makes us happy. So
Yeah.
And we also, when you reach out to us and do things, we have goodies to give you sometimes that you can use in your classroom. So that's always good.
It's always a plus. Just a couple of things I'd like to say is, of course, my look on things and my take on things is with behavior with students you work with, or even your staff. Make sure you build those relationships with those kiddos and the staff members, because that's going to help you more than anything throughout your career, is just being able to build a relationship, treating those kids like they're the most important thing in the world, and encouraging them and providing them with all the support that you can. And also just consistency. Try to remain the same person day in and day out. I know it's difficult. Some days it's harder than others, but that consistent attitude, that consistent presence for those students, being that constant, a lot of you guys and gals, the folks, you're the bright spot in your students' day, so they look forward to coming to school. Yeah, they may be a little aggravating sometimes, but they feel safe around you. They feel safe enough to be able to do that and be able to express what's going on with them and express their emotions and their feelings, and feel safe enough around you that they know that you're not going to hurt them, but you're going to try to help them and you're going to try to keep them safe. So build those relationships and encourage the students, and just enjoy your job. I mean, on something fun in
The relationship, I mean, that is, he cannot stress that enough. That is before, and there's a quote, and Doug can, I'm sure he can quote it. I can't, but it's basically, I mean, you build that relationship first, and then it's that they'll do whatever you want. It's, they know how much you care. What is that quote about?
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That.
So yeah.
Say it one more time and say it slow, because that, you all, is the key.
They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And then, so yes.
And we have lived that to see a lot of, like he said, a lot of times you are their saving grace. And when they have difficulties with other teachers, sometimes you're it. It's, I mean, when I first realized that, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, so you build that relationship first before you even teach them.
And like, again, thanks for everyone for being joining us this afternoon. Thanks, everyone.